Welcome to Based on a Book, the podcast for anyone who has violated the terms of their bond and the people looking for them. I'm your host, Crystal. I know about the duck, and I'm not afraid to tell your wife.
I'm Keri, and I want to know what happened to the duck because I'm nosy.
And I'm Lindsey, and I really don't want to know about the duck.
If you have not figured it out from all the clues we just gave you, today we're covering One for the Money, the first in a series that covers 31 full-length novels, a handful of novellas, and just one movie. I am pumped to talk about this tonight because I have a lot to say, and I know Keri and Lindsey do too. So let me just say a little bit about what this is first, and then we'll go into our reviews. This book is a gritty crime mystery set in New Jersey. It originally came out in 1994, so it's set right in that mid-90s time frame. The movie, however, came out in 2012, so it's set closer to that time frame. And it's there's some differences, and it's interesting. Stephanie Plum is your average Jersey girl from a small town, well, a small suburb of Trenton. She lives in a neighborhood that they call the Burg, where the majority of families never really leave. They all have their family dinners together. They all know each other. They go to school together. They get jobs right around town. Everybody knows everybody else. And it seems fairly typical. But Stephanie also has not had a job for 6 months. Again, it's the mid-90s. Things weren't necessarily going that great, and she lost her job and is just now telling her folks. And of course, well, hilarity and crime ensue. So ladies, before we get really into it, let's hear what we think. I want to start with Keri.
No, you do not want to start with me. Trust on that.
That's fair. That's fair.
Oh no! I was
Just say
hoping
it,
you were
girl.
gonna start. Okay.
Just say it.
Okay.
Just say it. Rip the Band-Aid off.
Okay. So I feel like I have to explain myself a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just gonna say my rating first. I gave it 1.5 amateurs.
Yeah.
And I want to explain why. So, first of all, when it started, I was like, okay, this is gonna be like a fun little like detective story, whatever. Like it's kind of funny. And then I was getting into it. I didn't really find anyone interesting. I didn't really find the story. It wasn't capturing my attention. I wasn't interested in the characters. And then I want to say this. I am of the opinion I will never tell an author what they can and cannot write. I'll never say that.
Right.
Some people disagree with that, and that's okay. That's just how I feel. I'll never tell an author what they can and cannot write. But I will judge you on what you're willing to put on paper and publish to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I will judge you for that,
Mm-hmm.
and I will have opinions about it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm allowed to have opinions about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I am aware this was written in the 90s.
That's not an excuse, but carry on.
Yes, I am aware of that, and I don't care.
No.
Because I don't like the language that's written in here. I think it's cringy. I don't like the way weight is talked about in here. I don't like the way people of color are talked about in here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it. It's not enjoyable to read about. I'm not gonna like read quotes from it, like out of context quotes from it. You're just gonna have to read it and see for yourself. But I don't like it. I don't find it enjoyable to read. So that's just my opinion on that.
Mm-hmm. All right then, Lindsey.
To follow up on that, I gave it 2.5 FTAs.
Okay.
I actually did kind of enjoy the story. Like, I like the, whodunit kind of. Like, I thought it was fun, but also, like Keri said, it was pretty cringy at times. So,
I gave it 2.5. I didn't come up with a witty thing because honestly, I really struggled to give it the 2.5. And the only reason I gave it the 2.5, because Keri's right. There's so much cringe in here. It's not even funny. And trying to tell myself it was in the 90s, it was in the 90s, really was not an excuse for a lot of it. It was a different time. I was there. I remember. Some of this stuff was still cringy then. You know what I mean? But the actual mystery, the actual whodunit part was really well done. And so again, there are 31 books in this series. The most recent came out in November of 2024, so just a few months ago. And I wonder if some of the cringy parts are no longer a part of the series. You know, I wonder if Stephanie Plum, the main character, kind of grew up, but I am not hooked enough to find out, you know? And so for me, that was a 2.5.
Yeah.
And unless you guys have anything else to say, we can get right on into it.
No, let's get into
Let's
it.
dive into it. First, I do want to put out the trigger warnings and content warnings. There is sex, nudity, violence, violent sexual assault, mention of drugs, child against child sexual assault in the first chapter, with flippant language around it, death, mental illness, torture, fire and fire injury, stalking, and gun violence. This is a crime mystery around the criminal justice system. So there's a lot of conversation about that. So yeah, I guess we'll just jump in. Let's set the scene. Again, it's the mid-90s, 1994 in particular. Forrest Gump was in the movie theater, as well as The Shawshank Redemption, The Lion King, and Dumb and Dumber. Ace of Base was topping the music charts. O.J. Simpson was on the run and then not. So Stephanie Plum, when she came home from dinner one night, knowing full well her car was about to get repossessed, had to tell her parents, I haven't had a job for 6 months. And mom and dad say, well, your cousin Vinny's hiring for a file lady. And she says, ugh, not Vinny, but at the same time agrees to go in.
The whole time I'm reading this, I'm reading in the thickest Jersey accent in my head.
Right.
And then in the movie,
there's basically no Jersey accent at all.
Well, it's an attempt. It's an attempt.
A little bit.
With Katherine Heigl, there's an attempt there, but it's bad.
I will say, so going home for Stephanie Plum is her mom and dad. She has a sister. She's just kind of mentioned in this book. From what I understand, she does appear in the other books. But in this book, she's mentioned. She doesn't live there. She's married and she has 2 kids of her own, lives with her husband. But at home is mom and dad and Grandma Mazer. And Grandma Mazer is a little slipping, a little silly, a little goofy. And Debbie Reynolds plays her in the movie. This is the last film appearance for Debbie Reynolds before she passed away. And I was thrilled to see her. That made my heart really happy. She was a perfect casting for Grandma Mazer, like played off that like slipping a little bit, but still fun and silly. And I really enjoyed that. So at dinner, Stephanie's car gets towed. In the book, Stephanie's car gets towed the next day. But anyway, she goes home that night. She kind of gathers what she can to take to the pawn shop and sell. She's trying to scrimp and save as much as she can. But she's already promised to go to her cousins to go ahead and ask for that job. So she does. And it turns out they already hired somebody. And the lady at the front desk, whose name I don't remember, Connie? I think it was Connie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Connie is a character. I adore her. She was a good one. And she was just like, you don't want that job anyways, honey. If you're going to spend that much time on your knees, there's better things you could do.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, girl. And there were definitely a few characters throughout the book and even in the movie that I thought were really good. They were just side nothing characters. I know they come up in future books only because I kind of read some like what's the whole series about, online stuff. And Connie comes up again. Lula, one of the stripper hookers, sex workers, comes up again. There's a couple other just random side characters that do reappear, and I really like that. The main characters, however, are every single stereotype you could ever think of. They are every New Jersey stereotype, every Italian American stereotype, every murder mystery stereotype trope is in this book. It's like every stereotype and trope ever written in the mystery genre is smashed into this book. From the locations they go to the people they talk to, it's dense. It's really dense with stereotypes and tropes, which is another reason why I think this book was so popular when it came out. And the whole series is popular now. These are easy reads. These are comfortable. Well, they're not comfortable, but they're like, you don't have to think that hard to read it, to understand it, to get into it. You don't have to expand your mind a ton to wrap your brain around it or anything like that. These are great commute reads, if you had like a train commute or if you were flying, an airport read kind of thing.
And I get like the humor in it too. Like the humor could like it grabs you right in the beginning.
And I feel
how
like
it's set up.
Right. And I feel like Stephanie Plum in the book is kind of more of a dry Yankee Northern humor, Stephanie Plum in the movie was kind of ditzy, and I didn't really like that because Stephanie Plum in the book is not ditzy. She's pretty average, but she's not stupid, Even the author Janet Evanovich says that Stephanie Plum is consistently average and heroic when she has to be. She's not stupid by any means, but she's not a genius either,
Yeah.
And in the movie, they kind of made her out to be like, she tumbles into good circumstances or she tumbles into luck, a lot, where as in the book, she actually had to kind of apply herself. So she goes to visit Vinny. They've given away the file clerk job already, but Connie says you could be, you could do a skip trace. You could chase down some of these FTAs. And Stephanie's like, what is that? And this is another part of the book that I did like, is there are a lot of industry acronyms that a lot of people wouldn't necessarily know. And Janet Evanovich finds a way to explain it in the book while not talking down to the reader, if that makes sense. She finds a way to explain it without it sounding like, for you dummies out there reading that don't know this already, like. And so Stephanie's like, well, what do you mean? And she was like, be a bounty hunter. Go after these people who fail to appear. And she was like, oh, okay, I can do that. Yeah. Well, who you got? And she hands her just the file on the top and says, this is $100,000 bond. It would make you $10,000. She goes, well, who is it? And she goes, it's Joseph Morelli. And then Stephanie kind of narrates us through who Joe Morelli is to her. And that's the guy, the kid who, because he was a child at the time too, who played choo-choo with her in her father's garage. And right off the bat, in the very first chapter, I'm going, what the fuck am I reading? What the fuck am I reading?
Yeah.
Like, it was unexpected. And weird, and it
uncomfortable.
And not even a part of the story.
No.
She could have just, like, the author could have just as easily made it like, he kissed me in the garage and then boom. But like, and then that's that, or like, I don't know, he pushed me, when I was a kid and didn't, like, it could have been like they were children. She was
And isn't
6.
it referenced like later in the book too? Like, we can play that again or something like that.
Like
And
it's some
like,
sort of like funny joke.
Yeah.
And it just very ick to me.
Mhm.
That was ick in the 90s too. There is no, well, it was a different time. No, that was not okay then either.
Yeah.
But then we find out that later on, when she was a teenager, she also ran into Joe Morelli, and she worked at the pastry shop, and she lost her virginity to him.
And Joe Morelli's like known as
A
the
ladies'
boy,
man.
yeah, the ladies' man, the boy that gets all the girls, and
The
like
bad boy that gets all the girls. Everybody knows he's a
yeah,
bad boy too.
yeah,
The boy who's giving his cannoli to everyone.
exactly.
Because again, every Jersey stereotype, every Italian American stereotype, there's, the food is all about Italian American food. That, like, everything is an innuendo. It's very, I don't know. It's very interesting. So she's, that Joe Morelli, and Connie's like, that Joe Morelli, and he's grown up to be a cop, and it turns out that
Oh
he
wait,
is.
wait. We've skipped over the part where whenever they,
Oh no, I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
I was gonna say.
So, we know that Joe Morelli was a cop. They allegedly shot an unarmed man, but he skipped out on his bond. And so Stephanie says, I want to do this. And Connie says, you're going to have to talk to your cousin. So she goes in to talk to Vinny, and she says, I'm taking this job. And he goes, no, you're not. That's dangerous. No freaking way. And she goes, I know about you and the boys. I know about you and the chains and the whips. And I know about the duck. And I'll tell your wife. And Vinny's like, fine, take the Morelli case. Like,
what happened with the duck? What are they talking about?
Listen, considering what we've already learned in this book, I don't really want to know what happened.
Maybe it's revealed later in the series, and I can look it up.
Honestly, if somebody else has read this whole series, would you please just tell us what happens with the duck so that we can get over it without having to read 30 more books? Thank you.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. No, I was going to say, we forgot to mention the fact that Stephanie, whenever she did like lose her virginity to him, and then he never called her again, so she went and saw him at the mall and walking outside the mall, and she went and hit him with her car and broke his leg.
Yup.
Wasn't it her dad's Buick or something?
With the Buick. Yep.
And he was like, you just hit me with your car. And she's like, oops, and then just left.
She was like, are you hurt? And he goes, yeah, I think I broke my leg. She's like, good. Got in the car.
See ya.
Bye. So
that's the last she saw of him.
Pretty much. So she takes the case. She gets in the crappy car, Chevy Nova that she bought with the last of the stuff that she could pawn, and that has no muffler. It's falling apart.
I want to know, first of all, where this pawn shop is, because honestly,
what pawn shop is buying toasters?
Exactly. As someone who is pretty like deep in like the resale stuff, like I do a lot of research in the resale stuff. Thrifty. I want to know where this pawn shop is that like you can bring literally anything there, and they'll literally buy every single item that you bring there for a decent price, to the point that you can pay for a car, a new phone, like everything.
I will say this is explained by it was the 90s, because you didn't have a ton, like kitchen appliances were not every household had a toaster oven and a toaster and the pizza oven and a blender. And those were not things that just every household had. And buying a used car for $150 was something you could do, especially when you were talking about a Chevy Nova that had no muffler and a head gasket crack. Like $150 for a quick used car.
A muffler.
It did start off with a muffler, but it was barely hanging on because it didn't take her long to last. Okay, so I did find out that Stephanie Plum and her car woes is an ongoing theme throughout all of the books. So that's something that I thought was interesting. Also, in the movie, she doesn't have to go get a new car or pawn all of her stuff, because Grandma Mazer shows up with this big giant Buick, who she calls the Blue Beast. It turns out that the Blue Beast also shows up in the rest of the series. It was her uncle's car that Grandma Mazer now has, but isn't really supposed to be driving. And so when Stephanie blows up other cars or runs into other cars or has all these other car troubles that she has, she borrows the Blue Beast, and for whatever reason, it's a tank. It lasts forever. She never, like, that one never gets messed up or vandalized or stolen or anything like that. So that was not in this book. The Blue Beast is not in the first book, but it is in the rest of the series, and it was in the movie.
Except, can we talk about how she shows up with the car, but clearly has house keys?
Right? Yeah.
Those are not car keys.
Okay, so also car keys in the 90s looked a little bit different, but not like that. That was definitely a house key. I know a locksmith, so I know these things. So she's driving off in her Nova, and instantly in the book, she kind of already knows what to do. She kind of knows how to stalk a guy. She goes to his apartment. She's peeking in the windows. She goes and checks his mail to see if his mail is there, what's in the mailbox. And it's like, how are you already know how to do this? Nobody told you how to do that. Nobody, like,
she has genuine curiosity. She's nosy.
She is nosy. And there's a part of me that's like, this is a girl that's been screwed over before, and she knows how to stalk a guy. Because as I'm reading this book, I'm like, I could be a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I could find you. Like, and I know the three of us together, we will find you.
Oh yeah.
Like, we would make the best bounty hunting team. Like, that's our next job. If this podcast just never takes off,
based on a bounty.
Right.
Trademark.
Yes. Oh. So she shows up there, and of course, she can't really get in. She can't see anything. She doesn't know anything. So she goes back out to her car, and she sits for a minute thinking about, like, what's my next step? And who should pull up but Mooch Morelli, which, again, with the names.
With the names.
So Mooch Morelli shows up, and she's like, oh, and so she ducks down and she just watches him, and he goes in, like, he goes around the building, must find the spare key or whatever, comes back to the front, lets himself in, and then comes back out a few minutes later with a big giant duffel bag. And she's like, I'm gonna follow him in her Nova. So she follows him, and then he goes to this other apartment building, and she's like, I'm gonna go in. So she goes in, she looks at the, like,
what's killing me in the movie is, like, she has, like, just her bag, like, on her shoulder. She's like, I'm gonna go in. Also, bounty hunting in heels.
Yeah, no.
In, like, a skirt and a blazer. What are we doing?
And again, this is where the book and the movie are so freaking different, because, like, in the book, she's, like, a little bit nervous. And so, like, we see her thought process, like, should I go in? I'm going to go in. I'm going to wait until Mooch comes out. Then I'm going to go in. And it's an apartment building. In the movie, it's a warehouse. And she just barges in, like, walking in her high heels, click-clacking across the floor.
Yeah, no way of being sneaky at all. Like, not even trying to be quiet or anything.
She's
like,
dumb in the movie. And I hated that. But in the book, she goes into the apartment building. She looks at the names on the mailboxes, and only one of the mailboxes doesn't have a name on it. So she's like, I'm going to check that apartment. And so she goes and bangs on the door. I will say this is something that I would do. I would just be like, well, I'm here. Like,
let me in the door.
She's only had this file for, like, an hour and a half now, but she's banging on this door, and who opens the door but Joe Morelli? So now she's face to face with this guy. And we even get in the book, she's just like, now what do I do? Like, I got him, boo. Like, and she's like, you have to come with me. And he was like, yeah, no.
I'm crying. I don't know why that's so funny. Well, it's like a little kid. You gotta come with me right now, mister.
Pretty much. And I will say I kind of liked in the movie how they portrayed this, even though it was a slightly different situation. in the movie, she's like, you have to come with me. He was like, I don't have to do anything with you. And she
Yeah.
was like, you skipped your bond. You are in violation of your bond agreement and you have to come. You failed to appear. And he's like, yeah, I know. They're not nice to cops in jail. I ain't going back. Like he's like ready to go, right?
Mhm.
He's like, your cousin sent you after me? Stephanie Plum? Like, and he's like, you broke my leg. You ran me over. And she's like, and I do it again. Like, they're just being sassy to each other.
Yeah.
So again, if you like this kind of like enemies to not quite lovers, but still enemies kind of tension, this is an ongoing theme through all 31 books as well. So there you go. Either way, he's just like, I ain't coming with you. He gets in his car and he leaves, and she's just like, what do I do? So in the movie, he throws her keys in the dumpster. That does happen in the book, but not until another time when she runs into him. And again, like the first part of this movie is pretty accurate to the book, but then so much gets cut out of the middle that we don't get to see Stephanie learning how to do this, actually like making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. I think that was kind of important. We also don't get to see the clues as much in the movie as we do in the book. And I'm just going to say, like, flat out, from the movie did not do well critically. One of the reviews I read was spectacularly mediocre. I thought that was...
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Katherine Heigl, she got like a Golden Raspberry nomination for Worst Actress.
Yeah, this was not her best role at all.
Not good.
But I think the thing that killed me the most about the movie was it was based on a book that I just thought was meh. And so I didn't expect a ton out of the movie. But even worse, there were not enough clues in this movie for me to have come to the conclusion that was the conclusion.
Yeah.
And I had just read the book, so I already knew.
Yeah.
But I still was like, wait, what? How? And I thought really hard, because that's what I like about mysteries, is trying to solve it myself.
Like, it has to be solvable.
Right. And the movie was not. The clues that they gave us did not necessarily lead us to where we ended up, you know?
I know exactly what you mean, yeah.
So yeah, where are we? Oh, so this is when Stephanie realizes, I have no freaking idea what I'm doing. And she goes back to the office and says to Connie up front, I need help. I don't know what I'm doing. Do you know someone who could like show me what to do? And she was like, I'm going to get you in touch with Ranger.
I love this character in the movie because, okay, my opinion, I thought in the movie there was more tension between Ranger and Stephanie in the movie than there was between her and Joe.
Yeah, like, I thought that in the book too, though.
Yeah, like there was way more tension between these two. I'm like, hello, can we have Ranger and Stephanie be together? Also, Katherine Heigl and the guy who plays Ranger are in Grey's Anatomy together.
Yeah, they are. And they're both hot.
I was like, hey, I know both of them because I used to watch a ton of Grey's Anatomy. Okay, Crystal, what do you know that we don't know?
Ranger does become a love interest through the rest of the series. On again, off again, just like Morelli.
He better, because honestly, I was feeling more tension between them.
So
that was my one note. I want more Ranger.
Yeah.
Everyone did. Everyone did. And apparently Janet Evanovich was like, I hear you. Done. I will say, if this Janet Evanovich, before she wrote this series, wrote romance novels. And one of the reasons she said she wrote this series or started this series is because she ran out of sexual positions to write about. All I'm saying is, I would love a Why Choose with Joe Morelli and Ranger. Just saying. Just saying. I'm just going to put that out there. Janet, if you're listening, we'll tag you in this somewhere.
find Joe pesty. Like, I find him annoying. I mean, maybe
kinda, yeah.
He might get better in the rest of the series. I don't know. I've only read the first book, but
I mean, personally, I kind of like
don't
that.
come for
Like,
me now.
right?
Does
I
their
kind of like.
fandom have a name?
I have no idea. The Plummies? Like, I have no idea.
What were you gonna say, Crystal? Sorry.
I like kind of that like antagonistic, like I don't even want to really call it tension, but that just kind of like that teasing and jabbing at each other
Yeah.
that Joe and Stephanie have. I like that Morelli has.
I
But
thought oh, go ahead.
but I find it like at a certain point it does become annoying. Like you have to show me the soft part too at some point, you know? And we do kind of get a little bit of that in the book, not so much in the movie. There's 31 novels, full-length novels in this series and one movie, and they have not attempted to make any more or redo it. And I feel like they could have. There's a ton of great material here, but anywho, where are we at?
I
We're
thought
meeting
that
Ranger.
it was gonna be more like, have you guys ever seen the Bounty Hunter movie? It has like Jennifer Aniston and Gerard Butler in
Oh,
it.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like I think he's the bounty hunter and he has to get his ex-wife, and like that type of tension and the comedy in that movie, that's what I was kind of expecting in this.
Yeah.
And I just like wasn't getting that.
No. So we meet Ranger. Ranger is former special forces. He's a Cuban American. He wears like all black outfits. That's his thing through all the books, is that he's always in all black outfits, and he drives a variety of all black, really cool looking cars. Like the cars change throughout the series apparently, but they're always like blacked out. He is known for bending the rules to get the FTAs he's after. He is known as the best, really. And so Connie says, "Here's Ranger's number. I'll let him know you're going to call. He'll show you the ropes." Ranger right off the bat is like, "This could be like a Henry Higgins, Eliza Doolittle situation. I can teach you. This could be interesting. This could be fun." And he kind of treats it that way, as this is going to be just kind of a fun thing for me. Like, is this even possible? Like, here's this girl who has no idea what she's doing, never had an interest in doing this, starting from scratch. Can I make this work? And so he gives it a go. Instantly takes Stephanie to get a new outfit, new bag, some gear, and she gets a gun. And apparently he like just like a quick tutorial in the range behind the gun shop, and then says, "Okay, put it in your purse," and like some forged documents that make it okay for her to carry it. And in the book they kind of talk about like, this is shady. In the movie, and this I wrote it down because it pissed me off so much. Wait,
Her and this gun, I can't with this gun.
I can't with the gun. So in the movie, it's in the purse. She definitely has no idea what to do with it. She has no idea what's happening, how to handle it, or anything at all, right? And it's that way in the book, but in the movie in particular, she calls her sister on the way out, and she goes, "I was shooting a gun. How cool is that?" The Stephanie Plum of the book would never have said that.
Oh, every time she was calling her sister, okay, first of all, I don't know if I totally missed that was her sister in the movie, like, that she said this, like, saying that it was her sister. Was that even said in the movie?
In the beginning, she said something about, like, "I'm at mom's," and so I just kind of assumed that was her sister.
Because when she kept calling her or talking to her, I kept being like, "Who the fuck is that?
There
Who
is
is that?"
no reason for her to be in this movie
And
at
she's
all.
never talked about again. Like, she's just, like, calling this random person.
And only, like, 2 or 3 phone calls at the very beginning of the movie, and then never again after that.
Like, if you don't know, even, like, in the book, it's just touched on for, like, a second, but, like, if you didn't read multiple books in the series, like, you wouldn't know who the hell that is. Like, if you were just watching the movie, you'd be like, "Who the hell is that?"
Pretty much. So she's got this gun. She's goes home to her parents' house for dinner again. And it turns out her mom has invited over some kid that she used to go to high school with, or, well, an adult now, that she wants to hook her up with. What was his name? Bernie something.
I don't remember. This is like a nightmare.
Yeah. And so she's there having dinner and she's like, why, Ma? Like, I don't. And then she's like, sits down and Grandma Mazur's like, this guy's talking about how like, oh yeah, I work down at the appliance store, like my parents own or whatever. And Grandma's like, oh yeah, you know, Steph got a new job. She's a bounty hunter. And she's like going through her purse. She got handcuffs and like dumps out her purse and a gun. And she's like goofing off with the gun at the table. And Stephanie's like, oh, Grandma, whatever. Ha ha ha, Grandma. But never takes the gun away. And then Grandma, as everybody's just kind of chit-chatting around the table like it ain't no thing, Grandma shoots the roasted chicken on the table.
And doesn't kill anybody?
Doesn't kill anybody, and nobody, like, freaks out or jumps or snatches the gun or, like, they're just, and nobody calls the cops. Even, like, if I had heard that right next door, I'd have been like, is everyone okay? Ring, ring. Like,
yeah.
What the hell is happening over here?
Yeah.
But no, they just treat it like, oh, Grandma, crazy Grandma. And Stephanie's like, give me that back, Grandma, and takes the gun and puts it back in her purse. Like, what
and
the
the mom's
hell?
like, my chicken.
Yeah.
But also the whole thing with Stephanie and this new guy is she was married before and she's somewhat recently divorced. And she's like, oh, I've tried that once before. I'm not interested.
Yeah. She's just like, why? But it turns out that old dude at the appliance store is, you know, when they're like, oh, he's looking for Joe Morelli. She's looking for Joe Morelli. Old dude's like, didn't he shoot Ziggy? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I knew Ziggy. I sold him a flat screen. And he used to always go to Sal's across the street, the butcher shop. And this is when I went, they wouldn't have told us that if it's not important.
Red flag.
So I filed that away. So, and then there's like a next day get ready with me where Steph is getting ready to go out. And she decides she's going to go to the very stereotypical mystery place, the gym / boxing training place. And she's got to meet this boxing champion, Benito Ramirez, because Ziggy worked for him. And so she's like, if I can figure out, maybe if I can kind of track down what was going on with Ziggy, I can find out what Joe's up to, what Morelli's up to. So she just walks in there, all dressed to the nines.
With her purse. She always got that purse.
With her purse, that big, giant, huge purse over, like... Yeah.
It's not like a crossbody, not a backpack. No. Get a backpack, girl.
I'm saying. But she just walks right in there.
With that handbag.
In what she knows is a shady neighborhood, parks her Nova out there in this shady neighborhood, and walks into this gym and, like super brash, walks right up to I'm looking for Benito Ramirez. I'm Stephanie Plum. Here's my card. And he like goes to shake her hand and grabs her hand and then won't let go. And she's describing him as like, he's huge and he's got these eyes that are like dark and mean. And I don't know what's going on in his head. Like you can't tell. And so then she's like, you have to give me my handbag. I'm being professional. And he's like, I want you now. And it was just like, no warning. He was just like, you want to be with the champ? You're going to be with the champ. I know what you like. The champ can give you what you like. And she's like, no, I'm out. But he won't let her go. It's this whole scene of her like trying to get away, and she finally swings her purse at him. The purse that had the gun in it, by the way.
Yeah, doesn't take the gun out.
Smacks him with the purse, and then the next thing you know, she's trying to like run, and there's gunshots going off, and she's like, what the hell? And everybody's like hitting the floor, but she's bolting for the door, and she gets out of there. Come to find out, Morelli had been like staking out the gym because she was right. So Morelli's like, get out of here. What are you thinking? So then She's like, you have to come with me. And he's like, yeah, no. Again, this happens like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, and she's, like, pointing the gun at him, and he's just, like, takes the gun out of her hand, and she's like, "Yeah, no. I'm not
Right.
going anywhere with you. And you don't even know how to use this thing, so shut up."
Right. So then she spends the rest of the day, like, trying to get her, like, goes back to her apartment and trying to, like, calm down and figure out what she's gonna do and make her plan and feed her hamster. Rex, the hamster. Who
I'm assuming that's, like, a common theme in, like, the rest of the books is,
I
like, this
hope
pet
so.
hamster.
I hope so. I didn't find that out, but I hope so. And then like, she hears a knock at her door. And she's like, who the hell's here this late? And so she goes to the door to look, and, like, she hears the voice and she knows it's Benito Ramirez. It's that boxer. And she's like, what the hell? And he's like, I know where you live now. I can come in anytime I want. I know what you like. He's like full on. And she is like, I'm going to call the cops. And he's like, no, you're not. Cause I tried calling you and I know your phone isn't connected. Like, that is the stuff of nightmares for me. I
Mhm.
was like, oh, so, but she's got like a sturdy door. It's one of the things that she loves about her apartment building is that it might be old, but it's like it's solid. And so she knows that she's safe as long as the windows are locked and, like, he can't get in that door.
I will say in the movie, what really, like, irritated me during going back to, like, the boxing part scene,
Mhm.
he, like, made her come into,
Into
like, the
the
ring.
And she just walked in there
She
like,
walked and she's like, "Okay, I need to speak to you for a
I
second
have
about
some
I have some
questions.
questions.
Like,
I have some
what?
questions." And then
It
he's
was
like,
so
Come
bad.
into, like, the ring, come into my office." And it's, like, the ring that he's, like, boxing in. I'm like and he, like, locks the door to go in. I'm like, "What are you doing?
Yeah.
Literally, what are you
It
doing?"
was not okay. It was a really
She's like,
dumb
"I
mistake.
got my purse, and I got my heels on, and my literally in my skirt." Like, what?
Like, somewhere in her head, she wasn't thinking that anything could ever happen to her, but
Exactly,
whatever.
exactly.
So then she decides that she's gonna go back to the next day. She's gonna go back to the scene of the crime, right? The original crime where allegedly Morelli shot the unarmed Ziggy. And she's checking out the apartment there and kind of asking around about, like, who saw what. Is there anybody here who saw anything? And she doesn't ask a ton of questions, but she gets a few answers, and then she leaves to go back to Morelli's place. And this time she's going to go with Ranger, hoping that Ranger can get her in. And she's like, how are you going to get me in? Are you going to pick the lock? And he's like, no, I got here 5 minutes before you. I asked the super for the key. In the
Hello.
movie, he picks the lock. I love that in the book, he's giving her all of these. They're like, work smarter, not harder type
Mhm.
things. Like, we can do this the easy way. Doesn't have to be that deep. Okay. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so they go to Morelli's place. She looks around the apartment to see if there's any, like, hints about where she could be or where he might have gone or who he might be with or anything like that. And she finds his keys, and Ranger's like, take his spare keys with you. That way, if you want to come back in here, you don't have to bother the super again. You've already got the key. And she's like, okay. And then they leave, and she's like, can't help but notice there's a car key on here. And so she looks and she sees Morelli's Cherokee. In the movie, it was an Explorer. I'm only assuming that Ford paid for some product placement in this movie. Because in the book, it is very clearly, repeatedly, a red and gold Cherokee.
Mhm.
Like,
Possibly.
fancy with a car phone. And in the 90s, a car phone was like $1.15 a minute to make calls. Like, it was a big deal. So she decides she's going to take Morelli's car, and that way, A, she'll have a vehicle to drive around in, and B, if Morelli happens to notice, it might piss him off enough to bring him to her,
Mhm.
which is really smart, Stephanie Plum. good thinking there. In the meantime, she's running out of money. So she goes back to the office and says, Connie, I'm running out of money. Can you give me an advance? And, can Vinny give me an advance? And she goes, no, but you could pick up some other guys while you're out there. There's easier ones. You could make a couple $100. And so she picks up Clarence Sampson, who is kind of a well-known drunk. He's constantly in and out of jail, and he's, missing his court appearances all the time. And so she's like, he should be an easy one. He's a pretty simple guy. Like, he's not a jerk. He's not violent. He's just a drunk. So she goes to kind of stalk him a little bit, figure out where he is, and she finds him, and she picks him up, and he's too drunk to argue. And she's like, we just have to reschedule you. Come with me and we'll get you rescheduled. And she takes him in. It's her first ever one. And she, already knew the drill. Ranger had kind of walked her through what to do. So she knew what to do. And this is one of the quotes in the book that did make me feel like Stephanie, we see a little bit more of the character, because a lot of these characters are very one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
But it says, he was my first capture, and I expected to feel satisfaction for my success, but now found it was difficult to get elated over someone else's misfortune. And that really touched me, because I know that there's especially in the industry that our real jobs is in, we have a tendency to do a lot of stuff that is really, it's a good thing that we do overall, but once in a while there's just that one situation where you're like, this is legitimately just somebody who's down on their luck and they're getting screwed, and it's hard to be a part of that sometimes. And so to see that kind of come out in this book was like, okay, I see you, Stephanie Plum. So then she decides she's going to head home. She's going to park the Cherokee in her parking lot, remove the distributor cap, and go hide in the bushes and wait for Morelli to come get his car and not be able to start it. And then I guess she's just going to jump out of the bushes and be like, aha! Like, that's all.
Like, have you still figured out how you're going to take him, like, to the police station? Like, you still haven't got past that point yet.
I think she got the spray at this point.
Okay. Yeah.
She went back to the gun shop and she was like, I've got the gun. It's important to have the gun, but I think I need something else too. And the lady was like, you need to buy this defense spray.
Yeah. Then she had to go out in the parking lot and actually spray it.
And then she was like, the wind started coming back, so she ran back inside.
Yeah. That was funny. In the movie, this part is really funny. She's like sitting out there in the bushes and it's just like pouring rain on her. Her mom's calling. She's like, are you coming for dinner?
She's like, I'm working, Mom.
Yeah. She's like, I'm really working right now.
I will
say, in the
say,
middle of something.
In the movie, she didn't take off the distributor cap. She was like, I'm going to steal the master fuse. You can't start your car without a master fuse.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a mechanic. I could be wrong on this one, but this is another one of those that's like, I've had fuses blow in my car before. You can go down to any auto store, Walmart, O'Reilly's, AutoZone, any of those, and pick up a fuse for like $1. They're plug and play. They're not like, each car doesn't have a very specific coded fuse that'll only work for this car. I mean, there's different types of fuses, but they're all pretty freaking cheap. So if you know what you're looking for, you just walk in and say, I need the 5-volt or whatever they're called, the little blue one,
The blue one.
The blue and the yellow and the orange one.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
So like, there was a part of me that's like, it's annoying, but it wouldn't have stopped him from just like still getting his car if he really wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
But she was all like, the master fuse. It's like,
she's
okay.
just in the bushes holding it, like, she's like, Mwah!
Now, so then like he sends Mooch to go get his car, and she's like, Mooch Morelli. Like, so Mooch tries to start the car.
So like, it's so, oh my gosh, what is the right word? Like, it's so like sitcom, like,
it really is. It's generic.
Yeah.
But in a good kind of comfortable way, which is why this got the 2.5 from me and not a 1, because there was a little bit more substance here, because I'm a mystery reader. Like, I read a ton of mysteries.
Yeah.
So a lot of this kind of felt, I don't want to say, it's definitely not a cozy mystery. There's not a lot of cozy going on here, but it was that familiar kind of process.
Yeah, I think that's something that I struggle with. Like, I think I've said this before on the podcast. Like, if as someone who mostly reads in one genre, when I go outside of the genre, it has to be like amazing. Because if
Yeah.
it's not, then I'm just like, like
Yeah.
wah wah. You
And I
know?
mean, I didn't know what to expect with this book. I knew there were 31 novels, and I knew that this one was really freaking popular. Like, it was on the bestseller list for like 150 weeks. Like, so I was like, well, it's out there. Everybody's read this. Everybody talks about it. The series is well loved. Like, might as well give it a go. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't good,
Yeah.
Anyways, so Mooch can't get the car started. She's like, whatever. I'm like, it's pouring down rain. I'm going inside. So she goes inside. She's going to take a shower. Sure as shit. Guess who shows up? It's Joe Morelli. She's in the shower and he just comes in and whips that curtain down. He's like, where's my distributor cap? Like, why won't my car start? And she's like, I'm not telling you. Well, it turns out she forgot it in the bushes. And so it's not like it's in the house anyways. So he starts, he handcuffs her to the shower curtain rod, like no towel, nothing. And he's destroying what's left of her apartment. She sold most of her furniture and appliances at this point, but like he is going through drawers, opening cabinets, yelling at her the whole time. And she's going, you gotta uncuff me, Joe. Like, you can't leave me like this. Come on now. Like, this doesn't make you look good. Like, she's like, you gotta, and he's like, no. So he brings the phone just within reach of her. And then he's like, I'm going to lock your door on my way out. So whoever you call better have a key. And she's standing there. She doesn't know who to call, because if she calls her mom's going to be like, I told you so. This is not a reputable job. You need to go to cosmetology school or whatever. And she knows if she calls her dad's going to end up seeing her naked, and she doesn't want that. And I feel that. And so she's like, I don't know who to call. So she calls Ranger.
I love this in the movie too, where he's like playing like poker with his friends or something, and he's like, oh, what do you like, what's up? And he's like, is this like an emergency? And she's like, well, I'm naked. He's like, I'll be right there.
Yeah.
It was great.
It was a pretty good one. So he comes in, he saves her. All right, where am I at on my list? I have a whole nice list here. So then the next day, Ranger comes, he unhooks her. He says, stop leaving your damn windows unlocked. And that's that. The next day, she goes to the next very stereotypical murder mystery place to go for information, the auto shop. She's like, every mystery book, at some point they go to the auto shop. I don't know why. But anyway, so she's at the auto shop because she wants to get an alarm put on the Cherokee so that if Morelli tries to steal it again, the alarm will go off. So she's putting an alarm on his car so he can't get his own freaking car back, which I think is ballsy, and I love this. So they install this like pressure sensor type alarm. It's not like a true car alarm, but like anytime the door is opened or closed and the pressure changes, it'll go off. There's a 20-second delay for her to put in the code to stop it, right? So she does that and she's super excited. And then she decides she's going to go back to that bad neighborhood and canvas around the gym, talking to all of the other, like, anybody who might have seen, have you seen this girl, the missing person? Have you seen, Joe Morelli? Have you seen this other witness? What do you know about, the guy who got shot, Ziggy, what was it, Kaluza or something like that? And so she's asking all these people, and this is where she first meets Lula and Jackie, who are sex workers who, like, in the book, It's just really, really bad about how she talks about how fat they are, basically. Like, they're fat, they're heavy, like, they could crush a man. It must be hard for them to get around. Like, it's really...
Says something about if they charged by the pound, they'd be
Yeah.
rich or
Like, it's...
something.
Yeah. And then, like, you know, they walk the streets, which you would think would mean they'd lose weight or something like that. And it was just like, whoa, like, back off, Stephanie Plum, Janet Evanovich. That's not cool. Like, whatever. It just made me mad.
Mm-hmm.
But right off the bat, she kind of makes a little connection with Lula. Lula's willing to talk and answer some questions. Jackie is a lot more unwilling to talk. She's like standoffish, like, you're going to get yourself in trouble. We don't need to be talking about this. We're not saying that kind of stuff. Don't tell her anything. You're going to get in trouble, whatever. In the book, Stephanie's like, no. I'm just looking for a girl. I'm just looking for a girl. And Lula so they answer some questions. But in the movie, when she says, I'm just looking for a girl, Lula says, oh no, girl, we're strictly dickly. And I cracked up. I was like, I'm writing this down for later. That's a good one. I'm going to use that. At another time, when she comes to ask them questions, Lula says, you want answers out of Lula, you're going to have to bring her a snack. And Jackie says, Lula. And Lula goes, what? It's hot and you're cranky and I'm hungry. I was like, Lula might be my spirit animal. I love her.
I love Sherry Shepherd.
Yes. She played Lula so well that I was just like, I need that. Like, honestly, I want them to make more movies just so I can see Sherry Shepherd as Lula in more movies. That's it. In Ranger. That's it.
Ranger.
Yeah. Yes, please. Yes, please.
I love me some Ranger.
Me too. I'm having inside thoughts. I'm going to keep them inside. It's fine. So this is also when we meet Mr. Alpha. A girl Stephanie's about to head back to her car and leave. And another girl comes out and says, hey, Mr. Alpha wants to see you. And she's like, okay. And so she just follows this girl into this building. And she takes her up to Mr. Alpha's office. Turns out Mr. Alpha is Benito Ramirez's manager. And he's like, hey, I heard what happened at the gym. That was not okay. I'm so sorry. I'm struggling to keep him under control right now. I don't know what to do. And she's like, you need to keep him under control. That's not okay. I will file charges if it happens again. Like, he's like, I'll take care of him. I'll talk to him. I'll make sure it doesn't happen. Spoiler alert, it keeps happening. So then she's driving around looking for Morelli. And she sees him driving in a van. Oh, we missed this part where she, like, before he finds out she has the Cherokee, like, she passes him in the street.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, wait a minute, that's my van. Who the fuck is my van? He whips around with my Cherokee, and he whips around this van and is like, let me in. And she's like, come on, you can come with me. I'm going to the police station anyways. It'd save me a lot of trouble. You can just follow me there. Like, it was very funny. That was in the book and in the movie. It was quite funny.
In the movie, though, she has, which happens much later in the book, but she has the one guy.
Clarence, yeah.
No, in the movie,
she has the old man in the car, the naked old man.
Mm-hmm.
I do love throughout the book, and we are going to probably run out of time, so I won't talk about them, but in the book, she does pick up a few other FTAs in order to get a few bucks here and there to carry her over. And I like that because that's how the job really works. You never work in just one. You're trying to, like, balance it all out. So I thought that was really cool. The next day, Stephanie goes to the laundromat to wash her frickin' clothes and sees Morelli drive past in the van. So she runs out of the laundromat and sees him follows him to the back of a deli. And she goes to get out of the Cherokee, and just as she steps out, he jumps out at her and is like, give me back my car. And she's like, no. And he's like, well, it wouldn't do me any good to drive it around anyways. I'm too noticeable. You can drive it. It's freaking fine, but you're not getting out of here that easy. I'm not going to let you follow me. And he throws the keys in the dumpster.
Which happened like way earlier it didn't happen with his keys, but it happened with
her keys in the movie in the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But also, he said, make sure you're not making any calls on the phone.
Yeah, too late. She done racked up a bill.
Karen called her mom.
Right? So she has to go dumpster diving for those keys. I have a note on that one. I literally, where did it go? Here it goes. It says dumpster and then ... This is where I leave. Like, I would quit that job so fast. Like, nope, you can keep the car. I don't need it. Because it's not just any dumpster either. It's like the dumpster behind a deli. So there's all kinds of like half-eaten food in there and empty like bits of sauce, and it's just gross. It's just gross. So, so then she goes after another FTA, Lonnie Dodd. He is supposed to be like a first-time auto thief, but he ends up a lot harder than she thought. He steals her gun. She calls Ranger to come help. Ranger comes to help, and he gets shot in the thigh and is just all like, it's whatever. Like, we got him. Here's your shit.
And in the
Don't
movie,
do that
he gets
again.
shot he gets shot like in the chest, but he's wearing like a
Kevlar,
vest.
yeah.
And he's just like, all right, gotta go to like my next case or whatever. And then she's like, okay. And it was like no big deal. I'm like, okay, bye.
In the book, he actually
seen
gets in the book he gets shot in the thigh and he goes to the hospital to get stitches or whatever. She comes home. She has decided that she's got her phone turned back on, right? That was one of the things she did with the money from one of her other FTAs, was get her phone turned back on so that if Benito Ramirez shows up again, she can call. And she bought an answering machine from the appliance dude. So now she's at home and she's getting a late night call of Benito Ramirez clearly torturing someone. And she can hear the girl like crying for help and crying and saying that she's hurt. And she's smart enough to hang up and switch the answering machine to pick up after one ring, and Benito calls back. And so the answering machine starts recording all this. The next day, she decides to go back to the scene of the crime again and ask some more people about like what's going on. And she finds out that another one of the witnesses has been killed. And so she's like, the witnesses to the original crime keep dying. Something's going on here. It could be Joe, but I don't think it's Joe. So then she goes behind the houses and she decides she's going to like kind of look around back there. And there's not really a lot going on back there. It kind of butts up against some other houses. And so she starts talking to the people in those other houses about what's going on. And nobody seems to have noticed anything, but one guy, who really old man, is like, this place is going to hell. It's just all loud back here. There's always trouble, the fire the other night or whatever. And she's like, do you remember anything about this, when this happened? And he was like, all I remember is that refrigerator truck out here being on all night and I couldn't hear a damn thing. So I didn't hear anything at all. And she was like, oh, okay, bye.
See ya.
So then she takes some beer down to Lula and Jackie to ask some more questions and maybe like, have you seen anything? Have you heard anything? And right off the bat, the both of them are like, hey, we can't talk to you. This is getting bad. And she was like, well, what about, have you heard anything about Ramirez? And Lula is like, he's bad news, girl. He's known to hurt people real bad. And girls don't say no to him. They're not allowed to say no to him. So she's like, okay, thanks. She gets another threatening call from Ramirez. And then she calls her cousin. Also, this is a very New Jersey thing. Everybody's a cousin. Like, she's related to everybody. She got cousins everybody. At one point, she visits a cousin I don't remember. She's like, I visited my cousin at the bakery or something. And I was like, what? That's a new one. Like, I didn't have that one on the list, But she calls her cousin, who's a cop, and is like, hey, can you show me how to handle this gun? And so her cousin, the cop, is like, you're in a dangerous situation. Let's start, like, every day after work.
Cousin's husband, right?
I don't know if he's her cousin or if, like, the wife that's her cousin's cousin-in-law. I couldn't.
Because she says something and he says,
yeah,
that
she
is
knows.
Your cousin.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, whatevs. Either way, everybody's related. So he's going to start taking her to the range every single day. After they go to the range this first time, she goes and takes him out for pizza and beer. And he says, she tells him about what's going on with Ramirez. She's like, if anything happens to me, I just want you to know this is where you should look. He's like, well, you should file charges. And she's like, I don't think I'm ready to do that yet. I'm like, in the job that I'm in now, nobody's taking me seriously. What would happen if I came whiny girl and, you know, then everybody would know I couldn't handle myself. And he's like, it's not like that. And she's like, yeah, it kind of is. So she goes home and she decides that, like, she locks everything up. She's just going to go to bed and try to get a good night's sleep. But, you know, she's all these threats from Benito Ramirez. She's a little nervous. Well, she wakes up the next morning. The sun's shining in the windows. It's a beautiful day. She goes to open the curtains, and there's Lula strung up on the fire escape. And of course, she freaks out. So she calls 911 and brings Lula in. In the movie, Lula is outside in the street. Like, she looks out the window and somebody dumps Lula out of a moving car kind of into the street. And obviously this is a message from Benito Ramirez, right? And Benito Ramirez is like, did you get my gift? Did you, like, it calls her. She's pulled Lula in. He calls her again. There's cops in the building and everything. She hits record on the answering machine. He's like, did you get my gift? I can see you right now. I saw you pull her in. Like, I know what, like, I could do to you what I did to Lula. Like, he's just over the top. So she's recording this. The cops in there are like, what the fuck is happening? Because even the cops are messed up with this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so she goes to, like, try to figure out, like, what am I gonna kind of do now, right? So she goes with Lula to the hospital, picks up Jackie. She's sitting there. She's trying to figure out, what am I gonna do?
She's like freaked out. Like, she, at this point, like, she's like super freaked out because she feels responsible for people getting hurt.
Right.
Because she just talked to these people.
Exactly.
And now they're getting hurt and they're getting attacked, possibly killed, because she talked and spoke to these people. And I thought in the movie this part was done really well, and I could really feel Stephanie's, like, emotions
Exactly.
during this part. She's, like, going to the gun range and, like, practicing, like, she's not sleeping, and, like, you can see, like, the tears in her eyes, and then she's, like, freaking out, and then she goes into her apartment, and there's Morelli in her apartment.
Yes. And not just Morelli's in the apartment. Morelli's in the apartment and he's cooking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say, I did like this part in the book. I was like, ooh, okay. Now in the movie, he's, like, just cooking whatever he can find in the refrigerator, which is basically just eggs.
Yeah. He's making an omelet.
In the book, he's, like, got wine. He's baked potatoes already in the oven. And he said, when I put the steaks on, the minute I saw you pull in the lot, like, they're ready to go. Come have a seat. And so, like, he's like, I need your help. And she's like, excuse me, what? And he's like, listen, you want $10,000. The only way you're going to get that $10,000 is if I let you bring me in. And I'm willing to do that if you can help me find the missing witnesses. And she's like, okay, I guess. So, yeah. He decides he's going to put bugs in the apartment, because at this point we know that Benito Ramirez is going to continue to harass her. And he's like, A, it would keep you safer, and that way I can help keep you safe. And B, we might be able to get a confession out of him, because they're all convinced that Benito Ramirez is probably the bad guy here, right? Like, we know he's a bad guy, but we think he might be the bad guy. So they talk about, like, he's going to set up these bugs, and he's going to have her wear a wire while she's canvassing down this bad neighborhood again.
The tension of putting on the wire in the movie
Yes.
That was pretty good, I'm not gonna lie.
That was pretty good.
You know I like a good tension scene.
It was pretty good. Also, there was some like innuendo in the book where he's like, "I could." He said something about like the Beast, and he was like, "I'll show you the Beast again if you want." And I'm pretty sure this is also where he's like, "We can play Choo Choo again," which is when I went, "Oh, you just ruined a good
Yeah,
scene."
it totally was that part. I remember that, and I was like, "Oh my god, just shut up, you idiot."
Pretty much. So then she's gonna go. She goes down to the bad neighborhood, Stark Street, and she's gonna walk up and down the street and canvas again and ask more questions. And it's hot. Nobody's really talking to her. It's the same people as always. She finally just goes to stand next to the car, and up walks Jackie with a cold Coke. Excuse me. And she says, like, Jackie's like, "It's hot out here, girl. What are you doing?" And she's like, "Oh, I didn't think that you were going to talk to me." And she's like, "Well, I can't help watching you suffer or whatever." And as Jackie is talking to her, Benito Ramirez is sneaking up behind her. Jackie was forced to set her up. So there's Benito Ramirez. He is like, "I got you, girl." It grabs her neck and is like holding her. And she says something smart ass to him about like, "You can't, I'm leaving here. This isn't going to work." He punches her in the face, like square in the face, like afraid that she's broken her jaw. Right. And she whips out that spray. She knees him in the shin. She whips out that spray and just right in his face. And he goes down. And this, of course, Mr. Alpha and Jackie and some other guy come running out, and they're like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And the one guy is like, "You're going to be okay, man," to Ramirez. And Mr. Alpha is like, "Stephanie, I'm so sorry." Like this, and she's like, "I'm calling the cops. I'm going to go report him. This can't happen." And he's like, "Just give it one more day. Just give it one more day. Rest on it. Think on it. I'll talk to him. I'll talk to him. I'll get him some help." And she's like, "I'm leaving." So she gets in her car and she goes to leave. And she drives around a little bit and she ends up going home. So she goes home and Morelli's there and he's basically like, "I can't stay here. They've figured out that that's my van. I got to go. But you've got to stay close enough for me to hear you." She's like, "Whatever." So she stays home. The next morning, the guy, Morty something or other, Byers, who was the original bounty hunter on the case, he ended up getting appendicitis, and that's when Stephanie got the case. But now he's better and he wants his case back. And she's like, "Fine. Vinny said I could only have a week anyways." So he goes to take the case back and he steals the keys and he goes to steal the car. And she sees him and the car blows up.
Yeah. Yep.
By Morty.
It was by Morty, like pretty much.
Bye, Morty.
Whoops.
Oopsie.
Excuse me. So I don't. Stephanie is freaking out at this point. She's got black eyes. She's busted up. This car just blew up. She was out there when it happened. She lost her eyebrows. And her mom calls her and says, "Are you coming for dinner? I made stuffed shells." And she's like, "Yes, I'm coming for dinner. Like, I need that." And I feel that. I absolutely feel that. I am a mama's homemade pasta kind of person, so I get it. Oh, I have a note, and all it says is "sent me into orbit," page 2. Oh, because she said it almost sent me into orbit. The car.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I thought of Keri. So then she goes to dinner with her mom. She comes home. Morelli's there, and he's like, "You want to talk about it?" And she's like, "No." And he says, "You're scared and you're sad, but you don't have to be, because we're the good guys and the good guys always win." And I found that to be weird, kind of. It was just so not Morelli that for that to come out, it seemed almost forced. But I guess in a good way. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, Stephanie decides the next day to go buy a blender.
For a margarita.
It
came with free margarita mix.
And girl, I get that. Like,
Yeah.
do it.
You need it after all this.
I mean, you almost got blowed up. So
Yeah,
go have you a margarita, girl.
blender. Get that blender.
So she goes to get a blender, and she notices across the street is the Sal's butcher shop, and she's like, you know what? Maybe I'll go in there. Ziggy used to go there. I'll see if there's anything obvious. She goes in, and she sees the smashed face man, the missing witness that everybody's been looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And she says to Sal the butcher, who's that guy? And Sal the butcher is kind of like, why do you want to know? He works from the distributor. Like, that's Louis. It's, and she's like, oh, Louis, huh? And then she decides to follow, like, Louis leaves, and Sal closes up shop and leaves with him, and she's like, I'm following him. Like, this is
In
the
the
part where I'm like,
movie, this part, I forget how the timeline is in the book at this exact part, but in the movie, this part was cracking me up because she's like, oh, that's his name, because Joe is listening to it, like, through the
right,
microphone that she has hidden. And she's like, oh, his name is this, and he's gonna be in the alley behind the
yeah,
building. Okay. And she's like, oh, he's gonna be here for this long.
oh,
Okay. I'm
oh,
at this
great.
address.
I'm gonna walk north on 13. Like, it was like, oh geez, okay.
He's
I
gonna
feel
be
like
taking out these giant barrels full of stuff. What's in the barrels?
it was very like, oh, okay.
Because she's trying to get
And
Joe to hear her and get his ass there to go see him.
so, of course, he's not moving fast enough. But
Yeah.
that's not how it goes in the book. In the book, she decides to follows them out to some marina, and she like backtracks. There's only one way into this marina, so she backtracks to the gas station down the corner, and calls from a payphone to her own answering machine, and is like, Joe, if you're there, you need to call this number for me. Like, you need to call. I'm going to be standing right here. This is what's going on. And he doesn't pick up. And so she calls again. She's like, you need to fucking call me. And so she waits there, and she sees Benito Ramirez's yellow Porsche go fly. Now, I have to tell you, I've already put together, like, a little ways before I put it about the car bomb is when I was like, okay, I know what's going on now. But, well, no, it was when Benito was in the street that I figured it out, like, after she sprayed him. Anyways, so she sees Benito's yellow Porsche, flying down towards the marina, and she's like, oh my God, I knew it. And then a little while later, he leaves again, but it's a 2-seater Porsche. So she knows that either Benito left alone or Benito left with Sal or Louis, but there's at least one guy still out there. And of course, this is when Joe shows up, and he's like, okay, let's go check it out. And they go check it out, and there's nobody out there. There's nobody out there at all. There's a boat that says Sal's Gal. So they look at the boat, and there's some stuff on the boat, and they're like, what's going on here? And then they decide to open up the refrigerator truck, the butcher shop truck. And so they go to open it up, and there's Sal and Louis, and they've both been shot in the head, and they're dead. And this is the first time Stephanie's ever seen a dead animal a dead person outside of a funeral. And so she, like, starts to get sick, and he's like, you're going to contaminate the crime scene. Don't throw up. And she's like, I'm not going to throw up, Joe Morelli. Like, it's very, very funny. And basically, like, they go to open one of the barrels. They see that they open it up, and it's Carmen, the one of the witnesses that disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, shit, all my witnesses are dead now. I'm still gonna, like,
She was Morelli's informant.
Exactly. So he's like, all my witnesses are dead now. I don't know how to get out of here. and something kind of like light bulb flickers in Stephanie's head, and she's like, but I can still take you in. And she slams the refrigerator truck door down and latches it so he can't get out, and she jumps in the truck, and she's gonna drive him in. And in the book, that's how that happened. In the movie, the reveal happens before that. The whole reveal happens. And I'm not going to tell you because I'm going to tell you the book reveal. So and she drives him into the cop shop and she's basically like, hey, I got Morelli in the back of this truck, but it might take you a few guys to get him out because he's really pissed.
Mm-hmm.
And she opens up the door and he tackles her, just dives out and tackles her. The cops, kind of rip him off of her. They go to book him and she gets the receipt for bringing him in, and she goes home, and the next day the $10,000 is wired into her account. She's obviously very happy, but also kind of really sad because she didn't want to have to turn in Joe, and she knows he's innocent at this point, but there's no way to prove it, right?
Yeah.
Well, she decides she's gonna take a shower. She's gonna just chill. She gets in the shower or goes into the bathroom and realizes, wait a minute, I didn't leave that window open. Why is it drafty in here? And so she goes to look and there's been a hole cut in her window. So she knows it wasn't Benito Ramirez because he doesn't care. He would have just broken the window. She's like, this is somebody who's smart. What's going on? And there's Mr. Alpha with the gun saying like, the only way I'm going to get free of this now is if you die too. So, I'm going to call Benito and he's going to come, handle you, and then I'll kill him and I'll say it was self-defense because you called me to help you or whatever. And she's like, but why? Tell me why. And he's basically like, I was trying to diversify my funds because I knew Benito wouldn't last forever, and I ended up getting stuck in a drug smuggling ring, and Benito and Ziggy always messed everything up, and Carmen was going to tell, so we had, Carmen was going to tell Morelli, that's why he went there that night, and he basically reveals everything. And
like a villain monologue.
It was a hardcore monologue, like tells the whole story. And Stephanie's like trying to inch her way into the other room because she knows Benito's on the way, and she knows that this is just a horrible, like, she's like, I gotta get to my gun. And she manages to get to the gun in her purse in the kitchen, and as Mr. Alpha's figuring out what's happening, he turns around and he goes to shoot at her, but she shoots him right through her purse and everything. And manages to call the police, even though she's been shot, but she got shot in the butt. And so she manages to call the police just before she passes out, and the police get there as Benito's climbing up the fire escape. They arrest Benito. Jimmy Alpha's dead. And the whole confession was recorded on one of the wire bugs that Morelli had installed in the apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So basically everything gets wrapped up. At the end, kind of my favorite part was just like, I have it written down as pizza and beer recap. And I really liked that. It was like he showed up with a pizza and some beer, and they talked about what happened. And like, he's been reinstated back into the force kind of thing. And he's like, are you going to keep, being a bounty hunter? And she was like, yeah, I think I am. And he's like, well, you're going to need to get some furniture. And he sits down on the floor and eats the pizza and turns on the game because she's still got his television. And that was it. The end.
I like how the movie did the whole ending, or like all the reveals too. Like, I know they have to make it shorter because, you can't have like a super long movie. And they just basically smushed all the reveals with the part whenever they're at that location and they see
with
the
the
bodies
refrigerator truck. Exactly.
in the refrigerator truck. All the reveals are like happening at the same time. But there's this part where she's like looking for the gun whenever he's like getting his ass kicked. And she's like trying to find the gun, and then she like won't like shoot them because she's like freaked out by it.
Well,
then,
she's like, well, you're kind of in the way. Like, no, I don't like this.
Yeah,
and so she puts it back and she just gets the spray again.
Yeah. And then at the very end, so all the reveals happen, and then she does the thing where she closes the truck door on him and says, like, I'm gonna take you in. And she calls the station and she's
That
like,
was good.
I got like 4 bodies, Morelli, and a shot in my ass, and I'm on my way, and like something like that. And that
It was
was really
cute.
funny. I loved
It was
it.
really cute. I think as far as the movie goes, I mean, how do we feel? I mean, I pretty much told you how I felt. It was.
I mean,
Yeah.
I really didn't like the book at all, like I said, but the movie wasn't very good.
It wasn't.
It really wasn't. I could think of like so many other. I actually really like Katherine Heigl, but I could think of so many other actors that could have played Stephanie Plum
Mm-hmm.
better
Mm-hmm.
for this part. So I did not like her for this specific part, but I do like Katherine Heigl a lot. And it just was like, I don't know, it was just lame. That's like
Yeah.
the only word I can think of. It's just lame.
I don't know. I think for me, and like I said it already, it just I want to be able to solve the mystery.
Mm-hmm.
And they did not give me enough clues to come to the conclusion
Yeah. Too
at
many
all.
phone calls with a random woman.
Just out of nowhere.
Lindsay, what did you think of the movie?
I mean, maybe if you could separate it from the book, maybe it would be okay as just a standalone movie. But it still had its moments, and the fact that Stephanie was so ditzy was
Mm-hmm.
kind of annoying. I don't know. It was okay.
Yeah.
So
That's kind of how I feel.
I bought this book used. I'm a huge fan of used books. When I bought it, I was like, well, might as well buy like the next few in the series because I love mystery series. So I have the first 4, and I don't know that I'm gonna read the rest. I have them. I know they're quick, easy reads, but I'm not really that interested. You
Yeah.
know, there was nothing about any of these characters that had me hooked.
Yeah. Definitely.
Just right.
So that just Ranger.
Just right.
I wonder if he got a standalone. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah. Let me
So
know.
that brings us to the question of the episode, which, as a mystery lover, I'm kind of excited to hear. What are your favorite mystery, crime solving, sleuthing television shows? There's a ton out there for decades now. It's such a huge genre, and I wonder what you guys like.
Who wants
Lindsay.
to go first?
Lindsay, go first.
Okay, I'll go first. So, some older shows that I really enjoyed were Monk and Psych.
Oh my gosh.
I love those shows.
I love them too, but I hate that you're calling them older. Carry on.
Well, I say older because I am currently watching one that is currently on TV with new episodes, which is Will Trent.
Okay.
Isn't that that's based on a book series?
It is. It is based on the Will Trent book series.
By Karen Slaughter.
I don't know that part. I just
Yeah,
know the TV
I think
show.
it's by Karen Slaughter, but I have to look up to confirm that.
The TV show is really good. And there's another one that just came out that's similar to Psych. It's called High Potential. It has Caitlin Olsen in it, who is from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. She plays Dee. I like both of those. Well, I can't say I like High Potential, but I like Caitlin Olsen, so I'll probably like it.
All right. What have you got, Carrie?
I just confirmed it is by Karen Slaughter.
Thank you.
Just wanted to put that in there. I don't really the detective shows I don't really gravitate towards those a lot. Like when I think of detective, sometimes they'll have or like a mystery show, they'll have like a fantasy element in there. Like sometimes I always think like Buffy or Angel is almost like a mystery type show because it does have like a detective type element to it.
For sure.
But A real like detective show that I really loved was Veronica Mars.
I knew it.
Yeah, that was like one of my favorite shows. Love that show. I've seen it several times. It's so good. Love that. It has Kristen Bell.
I love a lot of older mystery shows, but when I say older mystery shows, I mean Matlock and Murder, She Wrote. But specifically, I like the new Matlock with Kathy Bates. It's really freaking good. I watched the first couple of episodes with my mom just because it was something on television, and I was like, "Ooh, okay, I like this." So yeah, that's some of my favorites right now. I'm trying to think of anything else that's out there. Only Murders in the Building. Has anybody watched that?
Oh, I love Only Murders. Yeah,
I haven't seen that one yet. I keep meaning to, but I never do. Well, all right, ladies, that was an interesting episode.
It was.
I love when we do things that we end up not really loving that much, because I think it gives us a little bit more to talk about. And it definitely, I wouldn't have read this if it wasn't for us. So now I know not to read the other 30.
I'm happy we read it because I see it on every bookshelf. When I go, I'm a big thrifter. I go thrift shopping all the time. I love getting used books, and I see it on every freaking bookshelf all the time. I see this author all the time. So I'm happy I tried it.
Now we know.
Now we know.
All right, guys. It was super fun gabbing with you about Stephanie Plum, everyone's kind of favorite detective. Don't forget to sleuth out our socials on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment. We absolutely love hearing from you guys. The conversations are always fun. And join us next week for another mystery on the next chapter based on a book. Bye.
Bye.